Like, seriously. How the hell do you go from learning balance with your one good leg, kicking your opponent with it to win the match, then almost unleashing a vicious beatdown on your instructor's nemesis and using the nose technique to fucking air, and then kicking unconscious, and then kicking your foe. And that's how you win a fucking fight. Anticlimactically. But it's Don G. Corleone here. I'm here with a brand new epic rant. And this epic rant is gonna be for the Karate Kid Part fucking 3. Yep, and this film is the exact as pretty much all the reasons why I wish this film Karate Kid stayed a one movie in the first place. So what's the plus? Well, somehow because they got lazy because they couldn't come up with anything creative for the third one, John Kreese, they return him again for some weird reason. His life's now in tatters because his karate school's been shut down, and he goes to Terry Silver, a Vietnam War comrade, who's this ruthless businessman and martial arts expert, and he decides that he's going to help Kreese revive Cobra Kai and get revenge on Daniel and Miyagi. So, upon returning from Okinawa, they discover their apartment building's been demolished, and Daniel's mother, for some weird reason, has abandoned him for another job and for another nursing job somewhere else. So, yeah, of course she'd abandon her own fucking son in California and leave him homeless. Of course. And that brings Miyagi out of work, but going against Miyagi's wishes, Daniel uses all of his college money to realize Miyagi's dream of opening a tree shop and becomes a partner in the bonsai business, and of course, has to train for karate again. Because you all know. So, as my reaction, like, yeah. Why else do people think I pretend Karate Kid should never have had sequels? This movie is exactly why. The second film did have some great things I can enjoy about it, but this one, no. This is easily the worst film of the franchise, and it just first ruins a lot of the first film. And yeah, the fourth one, Next Karate Kid, is bad as well, but that one does not infuriate me as much as this one does. And it's like, because they couldn't come up with a new antagonist, they defeated Miyagi's arch nemesis. They decided, oh yeah, remember John Kreese from the first film, who got defeated in the beginning of the second film? Bring him back. He'll be our antagonist for this one again. We'll do it again. Because we can't come up with somebody else. So let's ruin his defeat at the beginning of the second one. Or technically the full ending of the first film. So yeah. How this made was, originally this wasn't supposed to be a direct sequel to part 2. This was going to be a prequel with the two main leads still involved. And it would have involved them, Daniel and Miyagi, traveling to 16th century China in a dream and meeting Miyagi's ancestors, which honestly, when you come up with a prequel idea, that would have honestly been cheesier and cringier. And kind of envisioned this film to resemble a Hong Kong-style wuxia film and have a female protagonist, but the producers laughed at that idea, and Kamau was reluctant on having to rehash the same story all over again, and the only reason he came back was because the studio agreed to pay him more money. So, after Robin Lively was cast as Jessica in this movie, producers had to modify her role of protagonist to Daniel's new love interest again, because, well, I was only 16 at the time of filming, and of course, Ralph Macchio, who, although Daniel's 17 in this film, he's now like 27 years old. And so this caused romance scenes between Jessica and Daniel to be rewritten so that the pair would develop a close relationship. And that's your sign of fucking stupidity at best. When you have lazy writers. And he pretty much... And Thomas Ian Griffith, who plays a Vietnam veteran in this movie, and is 20 years older than Daniel. He was actually a few months younger than Macchio, so not great casting plan right there. And John Kreese was going to have a larger role in the film, but because of his scheduled conflicts with this film called Hard Time on Planet Earth, Terry Silver got written into the script. So, upon release in 1989, 3 years after Part 2, Karate Kid Part 3 was, well, moderately successful at the box office, but this one received even worse reviews than the second one, because they just rehashed elements, because for good reason, this movie rehashes elements in the other two movies, and actually makes the stuff that was good about the first film worse, actually, and actually terrible this time around because they didn't know what else the fuck to do, and this was clearly a doomed film from the start. While Griffith's performance as Silver did receive praise from some critics, and it didn't stop another film following it about 5 years later with the next Karate Kid, which would have a new protagonist, and that's another review though. And so yeah, it's the first Karate Kid film without William Zabka's involvement, and because he didn't come back until the Cobra Kai series, and it was the first film in the series to have Alvin Sten as a director before final to have him as a director, because he would retire in 1999 and then passed on in 2017. May he rest in peace. And also, it was Ralph's last involvement with the franchise until Cobra Kai, and will also be involved again in Karate Kid Legends. So, yeah. Here are all the problems with this disaster of a movie. The filmmaker, you'd think that if this was the final outing for Daniel and Miyagi's storyline together, you'd think he'd try to make something decent. No. Not at all. And this time around, you could tell Ralph was just kind of tired of the role at this rate, because he really phoned it in this one. Remember, his acting he had in parts one and even part 2. Not here this time at all. And Ralph really all Ralph does in this film is a bunch of twitching and bouncing for the entire film. And apparently those are karate moves. And also, oh god, this is probably his worst written yet. There's times when Daniel does come off as, Daniel can be arrogant at times. Yeah, I understand that, but the difference was, at least there's times when that's actually part of the character development of the other films. It's how he, and eventually learned some life left. When he learned those lessons from Miyagi, he developed as a character. Heck, there's times in part 2 when he's even better written than this. This time around, he is annoying. This time around, he just does not shut up in this film. This guy just never stops talking throughout his entire scenes, and ugh. Here, and the karate moves he makes in this one are awful. It's just it's like someone from the street could have learned this and won all this in no time. And the late Pat Morita, may he rest in peace once again. He has limited screen time in this movie, sadly, and most of the time gets cameo status. And Miyagi's the one character that's never tainted much. Regardless of even if the second one wasn't that great, he was still great in the second one. And this one around, he acts uncharacteristic at this point, where he barely seems like he really cares much about Daniel anymore at this rate. And his supporting cast in this one, they don't really fare at all. And Mark Cove, who one of the best performance, who also gave a great performance in the original film, he clearly was asked to come back for this one. And this time around, if you're bringing John Kreese back, you think he'd actually be the main villain of the film, and Daniel would have to be facing him in the tournament? No. You don't get that here. No. He's a glorified cameo role this time, and all he does, pose, yell, and laugh. And Kreese, and you think he'd be wanting to straight up murder Daniel Miyagi for costing him his business. He doesn't look that fucking pissed off at all. And so, instead, our antagonist is an army buddy of his named Terry Silver, who gets one of the worst villains, is easily the worst villain of the series yet. And Thomas Ian Griffith doesn't really just chew scenery there. He basically just straight up ruins any potential of the film. This movie really had potential in the first place. Just nonstop smiling and just smug behavior throughout the film. And the worst thing is, apparently his character's older than Daniel, but yeah, Ralph Macchio is actually apparently much older than Griffith was. So what the fuck? And there's many scenes, once again, they rehash elements from the original film. Like, seriously, like, Daniel gets a love interest. Daniel is bullied by the new recruits of the attempted revival of Cobra Kai. Where are we seeing that? Oh, right, the first one. And the second one. I've seen that 3 times. Those 3 times now this happens. Find new love interest, get bullied, have to train for a fight, win fight, done to fucking death. Does this have to be the same character arc? Like, hell, it wasn't even this. Hell, the rehashes weren't this obvious in part 2. At the very least, yeah, they still rehashed some elements of. Part 2 did rehash some elements, but they didn't make them this obvious. Like, and they did somewhat different with them. Like, and the love interest here is honestly much worse written than the love interest was in part 2. Like, the part 2 love interest at least somewhat was decent, but love interest in this, no. Just there to try to beat Ali all over again. Except even less interesting. Yeah, just terrible acting. Like, Ralph was just clearly bored of the role at this rate. It's like, and it's supposed to be like 17 years old, but he was 28 around the time this was starting to film. So the acting comes off as cringy this time. Pat's role in this one was really not much else to do. And also, he looked bored of the role. Martin Kove was just there to be evil, like, or laugh, or just look like that the whole film. And he's brought back for no reason, basically, so he gets, like, nothing to fucking do. And, like, the plot, same plot. Same plot as the original. Because, well, we developed Daniel in the first film, so the second film, let's develop Miyagi, explore Miyagi's past. What do we do for the third film? Oh, right, huh. We can make a prequel? No, that's fucking stupid. Don't do that shit. Don't do that. That's stupid as hell. You want to know what you should do? Do our version. Rehash the first film. Try to bring back Cobra Kai, but make them fucking useless. That's what you get with this. Almost the same exact story. So how do we even start? So we start off with a recap, with yet another recap of the first film. Like, now that I think about it, I wonder if this was an alternate version of the second film they had planned, but they clearly know that'd be bullshit, so they scrapped it and decided to make the actual second film we got instead. But they recap the first one again because because they act like we don't even remember the events of the first one, so we need to recap it again. Then they recap the beginning of the second film, and then it cuts to John Kreese. He's now all broke, and so he goes to Terry Silver, this war buddy of his that was a toxic chemical magnet. And so Silver vows like he's going to help him revive Cobra Kai and get revenge on Daniel Miyagi, even though he doesn't really look all that pissed with them throughout the film at all. And he sends Kreese for a vacation to Tahiti, and he hires some champion named Mike Barnes, who's known for vicious personality and no sportsmanship, to challenge Daniel at the next tournament. So then it comes to Daniel Miyagi. They've come back to LA from Okinawa, and apparently, like, even though this was like a year ago, since the events of the first film, apparently it's supposed to be a year since the first film, some weird reason the apartment has been demolished, even though Daniel's clearly just lived there for 6 months. And apparently, Daniel's mother is all the way back in New Jersey, and so she left her own son in LA and didn't bother waiting for him to come home? What? What the fuck? So, this is a great Mother of the Year. Yeah, she's off screen once again. Just abandoned her own son in LA. Like, didn't think about waiting for him to come home first before taking this job. Like, clearly thinking, yeah, he'll be fine. Like, no, he's not at college yet. He's still in Okinawa. That's not his home. How about you wait for your son before you ditch and take off to go to New Jersey? Again. Yeah, your uncle's ill, but what about your son too? So, Daniel's basically now homeless. Now, Miyagi's unemployed, but so Daniel ends up moving in with Miyagi, and Daniel, like, instead of going to college with the funds that Miyagi had given him in the second one, he uses all the college funds to instead finance a bonsai shop for Miyagi, and out of gratitude makes him a partner in the business. And so Daniel goes to a pottery store and befriends our third love interest, Jessica Andrews. You know, remember, you're asking, what happened to the love interest in the second film? Guess what? They never explain. They never explain it. They never explain their breakup. Part two even explained the breakup of his love interest in the first film. This one doesn't. You never find out. You never really know much about that. She never even appears in this movie. We get a third love interest yet again. Her aunt actually owns a store, and Jessica agrees that they'll go on a date that night. And apparently she's actually from Ohio, where she actually has a boyfriend, so they remain cordial. So, yeah, it's another attempt at a love interest that actually ends up being for naught because she actually is already engaged. So, yeah, thanks for that. So you didn't really need a female lead in this film either. At this point, if they weren't even going to be a couple, then why did you even need to include a female interest in the first place? Yes, like, here we go. Here's how this film's already shit. Complex that Daniel moved into in the first film, that set up the first film in the first place, got destroyed and demolished apparently for some weird reason, even though he only lived there for 6 months. Daniel's mother, yeah, of course, like, she probably would just abandon her own son in Los Angeles and return to the place she moved out of in the first place. So they're basically saying that Daniel Miyagi came back home for no reason at all now. Because as soon as they get back home, their home is destroyed. Talk about bad fucking writing. And the movie expects us to ignore it. So what if the apartment looked old? So you get cliches, plot lapses, script that wastes actors' talents, and like, and so it's like Daniel idolizes Miyagi, that Daniel remember all this advice he got and not turn to the dark side karate. Well, yeah, Daniel gets sucked into the dark side a little too easily. So it wonders if he really had much full commitment to Miyagi in the first place. But of course, like, you have to remember, if you don't have this character flaw, you don't get a movie here. Well, we didn't need this movie in the first place then. And Terry Silver, like, maybe could have provided some interesting moments, but they come off as poor. Like, and the final match even sucks. Like, this whole caricature rich guy thing, like, no. All it really did was twist edges and laugh, and yeah, and just dump toxic waste, and apparently has his heart on making Daniel Miyagi suffer for humiliating his ex-platoon mate, who basically was a corrupt piece of shit that abused his students, beat his students if they tried to show mercy to any of their opponents. Oh, had them basically assault a bunch of random strangers. Yeah, who deserved every bit of shit he got. Why do you think the guy lost his fucking business in the first place? Because he's a corrupt scumbag who teaches illegal methods of karate. That's why he's broke. That's why he's out of a job. And do you think he wouldn't even be allowed to open another karate class again after his defeats? Somehow, he's able to find a friend to help him do it. And this plan here, it's just to send a bunch of goons that were clearly rejected for their behavior to torment Daniel, and somehow they'd be allowed. And so, like the first one, beat up and harass Daniel, force him to enter the karate tournament. Yeah, here we go again. We're redoing the first film, and we're actually making it crap. It's not the only time they rehash the first film either. And you think John Kreese would just try to be the one to fight Daniel instead? No, like, he doesn't do much at all, like I've already said. So his revenge doesn't even come off as, well, intimidating at all because he's not going to do much. In fact, he even barely appears in the film in the first place. And these half-witted goons, they just follow Daniel everywhere. They follow him to some cliffs where Daniel and his female friend, they repel the cliff because they're getting a tree from Miyagi. So, when eventually Miyagi introduces Daniel to a new kind of training called kata training, then Silver makes himself known to them both. It mentions that he and Kreese got stationed together in South Korea during the war, and Silver announces that Kreese had passed away. Yeah, well, obviously he hasn't, because it's obviously part of the shitty plan. Apologizes on his behalf, and so Barnes then gets accompanied by Silver's goons named Dennis and Snake and harasses Daniel and Jessica, and they wreck Miyagi's shop, steal his stock of bonsai trees. So Daniel decides to go get a valuable bonsai that Miyagi bought from Okinawa to replace the missing trees that got destroyed. But then, of course, Barnes just magically appears, says, hey, sign up for the tournament, or you're stuck at the bottom of the cliff. And I'm damaging this tree. And so Daniel has to accept Silver's offer, even though Miyagi refuses to train him. Like, you think even though Daniel is one who helped revolutionize your shop, you think you would still return the favor and train him for this tournament? No, he doesn't. Not till like the very end of the movie. Like, the writer who wrote this clearly had no clue about what to do. Like, hell, the film is even so boring and so awfully made, and like, there's barely even any karate action in the first place. Karate Kid 1 had more karate action than this. Hell, even Karate Kid 2 even had slightly more karate action than this did. And like, Mr. Miyagi in this film, he's just horribly betrayed. Like, Miyagi would never refuse to help Daniel. Like, I thought he really cared about Daniel in this one, but this one, it basically acts like as if he just hates him now. Right there, like, this is why I consider it the movie where the two leads became assholes. Because basically both him and Daniel are basically assholes in this movie, and they pretty much act like as if they can't stand one another. And so the bond relationship between the two that was epic in those last two movies, it's destroyed by this. Ugh. Yeah, and the romance, the attempted romance was awful. The sloppy story. And apparently LaRusso in this one only has to fight like one fight to defend his title, and that's not a tournament. How was that a tournament? I thought the point of a tournament was to fight multiple fights, not one. Hell, in the first one you have to fight multiple people. Not just one person. It'd be like if the first film, you only have to fight Johnny and then you win. No, he had to fight the entire Cobra Kai team. And broke his leg to one of them. It's like they don't want to remember that. So, and Danny somehow is able to defeat a pair of opponents in the first two films, and somehow Danny transforms back into a wimp and has to rely on rule and technique to defend his title in the championships. So, anyway, at the Cobra Kai dojo, Daniel has to be trained brutally and takes this physical and emotional toll on him, and it just further alienates him from Miyagi. And so, one day when he's out at an outing with Jessica at a dance club, Daniel ends up attacking a stranger that comes near her because Silver bribed him into doing so, and that's suddenly after Jessica is horrified by this suddenly makes Daniel realize what's going on with his own actions, and he makes amends with Jessica when she's about to go home, and she tells him, go patch things up with Miyagi, and so he just quickly patches things up, and everything's all solved, and laments that he forgot all Miyagi's lessons. Yeah, no shit. And Daniel then learns the bonsai that Barnes' damage had budded and healed, and so Miyagi finally decides to train him. And so they go back to the dojo, and Daniel informs Silver that he's changed his mind about competing in the valley, but Silver's like, no, you can't do that. Barnes, come attack him. And Daniel tries to escape, but then Kreese finally just shows up like, these guys just teleport out of fucking nowhere. And then Miyagi arrives and defeats Barnes, Kreese, and Silver, and then trains Daniel for the tournaments, and so yeah. Then the training just fucking happens, like, whatever. I don't fucking care. I don't fucking care what happens. Because this film is just nothing at all like the first like the first film, or even to some degree the second one. A silly nonsense story. Like, even the story of the second one actually was a great idea. Like, I'm not a big fan of that film once again either, but I think it's alright, and that had a good concept. Right there. When you explore more of Mr. Miyagi's past, I like that they did that. Right there. That was one of the few good things about that movie. I'm more mixed on that movie, but that movie even was more watchable than this. It was actually much more stuff in it. It was more karate than this was. Uneven screenplay that stretch, bad direction, performances that suck. The first two, you felt the connection with our two leads. This one, you don't feel any connection at all. Danny LaRusso is now a complete dumb fucking idiot. I mean, like, really dumb in this movie. Like, and we're supposed to have some connection with them, but even though Daniel was never known for being bright throughout the series, but this one, his stupidity is worse. Like, and of course, Miyagi doesn't really get much of a role. And Danny doesn't learn this whole move to really implement the end fight. Just makes a bunch of air poses and then strikes down his opponent and then just wins the fucking fight. So yeah, like, what made what made the first film stand out? You had the whole box standard martial arts film, and the writers decided to move this film series into the whole direction. And of course, you have this different world here. Like, the Karate Kid was about like life and self-defense and self-respect. This movie just sacrifices all of that and makes the film suffer. Like, seriously, these are lead characters that deserve better. Like, if this is supposed to be their last film together, why not just further the humor here and further the wisdom and further the development and stuff and revisit? No, like, but they couldn't come up with anything because they clearly used up all their ideas by this point. So they had nothing left to think about. So they just dusted off Cobra Kai, like, yeah, let's bring that back. They dusted off the John Kreese character to give him nothing to do, but they came up with another villain at the last minute to make it less obvious, but we can already tell the rehashes are right here. And of course, and the villains are honestly worse. I didn't care much for the villains in part 2 either, but there was at least somewhat of a connect. But those villains had a connection with our lead characters. These villains, no. Do they have a story? No. Are they fun to watch? No. Did they need to be written as villains? No. So now we get on with the finale. So Silver then, at the tournament, announces, we're going to reestablish Cobra Kai as a business franchise if we win. So the final match, Silver tells Barnes, you need to torture Daniel and alternately score points and lose them by illegal strikes. And somehow this really does nothing. This opponent doesn't even get disqualified quick. At all. Like, you remember the first film when John Kreese told the most sympathetic member of Johnny's gang, I want you to break the leg. And of course that guy was clearly horrified by this idea. It's like, no, I can't do that. That's illegal. I'll get disqualified. Do it. No mercy. That guy was the most sympathetic of the gang, and actually clearly did not approve of Kreese's actions. But you could tell that character, you could tell the whole gang was scared of Kreese. Right there, and they were pretty much starting to realize what a monster Kreese really was in that moment. And he broke the leg and immediately was horrified by this, and even tried to ask Daniel if he was okay before getting pulled off the ring disqualified. And like, that right there was clearly where the game was starting to realize how their master truly was. Here, none of that kind of stuff happens here, and somehow Barnes just is able to do all these legal strikes without even getting kicked out. And then the match ends in a draw to sudden death overtime, and so Daniel is pummeled, but he doesn't even look pummeled at all. In the first film's fight, he looked much more pummeled. Like hell, he suffered much more injuries in the fight of the first film. Here, he just barely has a single bruise at all. And Daniel's like, no, I don't want to quit, but Miyagi insists that Daniel's best karate is still inside him, and like, Daniel would not back out of Daniel never backed out of a match in the first two. Remember the first film when they were thinking about making Daniel quit, but Daniel didn't want to quit, and not completed his character development, and he had Miyagi heal his leg that got broken. Right there was able, right there, because remember that Daniel? That Daniel's not here. Or the Daniel that basically almost beat Miyagi's nemesis to a pulp, but it's refrained from killing him and just tweaked his nose. That Daniel's not here. Daniel would not be this much of a wimp in a karate match. So, after this advice, Daniel then performs the air fucking moves with the kata. And this apparently is able to knock out Barnes, and he wins. And then Daniel wins the All Valley, and revival of Cobra Kai does not happen. Oh, whatever. The movie's fucking over. I don't give a shit. It's over. I don't give a damn. At least it's finally fucking over. But that's how Karate Kid ends, with a pathetic finale. All these air punches. You don't even give a shit if Daniel loses or even wins, because he's just nothing now but an annoying bitch this whole movie. It acts like he did not learn a fucking thing from the first or even the second film. Now, would I have any good qualities with the film? I'll say Pat does give a fine performance, but even if his character is badly written here, as is Daniel's characterization with it, and I guess there's that. Like Pat Morita's performance is still good, despite the uncharacterization he suffers in this movie. But other than that, there's just nothing to like about this movie whatsoever, and this is what pretty much damaged the Karate Kid, the series. Cobra Kai did revive some of its fan base and reignited some hope in its fan base, but it's just not a show I plan on watching. That's the thing. I don't really want to watch that show. I know it's got its fans that really love it, but that show doesn't look like my cup of tea. So in the end, you want to see the return of Kreese and see how this whole thing at the time had wrapped up? Yeah, no. Don't do that. Don't do it. Just, honestly, just go grab a stack of papers and write down your version of this. Like, I'm sure any of you watching this review could come up with a better version of this movie than what the hell we got with this. And this does not deserve to even be associated with the Karate Kid at all. Anyways, that's it for my epic rant on the Karate Kid 3. If we're going to rank the Karate Kid 3, here's how I'm going to rank this movie. So overall, if you love the first film and enjoy decently enough to, oh, please avoid this movie like The Play, because this just spits on those movies' faces. It ruins character arcs from other movies that happened before it and damages the storyline character developments. If we're going to rank the Karate Kid Part 3, I'm going to give the Karate Kid Part 3 a 1.5 out of 10. Alright, there we go, guys. And well, unfortunately, the damage is still not done being revisited, because we still have yet another pile of shit to revisit, and that's the next Karate Kid. Yeah. Still more shit to get through. We have 2 more bads to get through, and then at least this series will be completed. Now I want to know in the comments down below what you guys thought of Karate Kid Part 3, whether you're one of the many like me and the rest of the fans who hate this movie, or if you're one of the few minor group that does like this movie. And until then, that'll be it for this epic rant. Thank you all for watching. If you like this one and see more, don't forget to like, subscribe to Don G. Corleone.